The day was dark and stormy, much like the mood of the Queen. In the heart of the English court, a young man, once the darling of the realm, now faced his ultimate reckoning. Robert de Vereux, Earl of Essex, stood before Elizabeth I, his former patron, his face a mask of defiance and sorrow. The air was thick with tension, the Queen's eyes piercing through the shadows, her voice cold and unyielding. "You have disgraced yourself and your lineage, Essex. Your actions have brought shame upon the court and have tested my patience to its limit." Essex, proud and impulsive, had always believed himself invincible. His ancient lineage, his good looks, and his imagined talents had made him the center of attention. But his intelligence was marred by a chronic lack of judgment, and his passionate emotions were often uncontrollable. He had made countless mistakes, each one compounded by his inability to learn from them. He saw the hostile reactions of his fellow courtiers not as a result of his own impulsiveness, but as evidence of jealousy and conspiracy. In July 1587, during the summer progress, Essex's relationship with the Queen hit a low point. Elizabeth, known for her quick temper, made disparaging remarks about Essex's mother, a subject that touched a raw nerve. Essex, unable to control his anger, lashed out and blamed Sir Walter Raleigh, a rival favorite, for turning the Queen against him. In a fit of pique, he stormed out of the house where the court was assembled, declaring that he was off to Flanders to seek redemption on the battlefield. To most courtiers, such a reaction would have been suicidal, but the Queen, ever indulgent with her favorites, treated it as an amusing tantrum and summoned him back to court. In April 1589, Essex's financial troubles pushed him to desperate measures. He owed at least £23,000, a staggering sum. He commandeered one of the Queen's ships and set off to join an expedition to Portugal, led by Francis Drake and John Norris, in a futile attempt to improve his financial situation. Drake and Norris, upon learning of his unauthorized presence, ordered him to be returned to London. His ignominious return did little to tarnish his standing, and he was soon back in the Queen's favor. By 1590, Essex's financial plight had not improved, but the Queen, perhaps out of a sense of pity, granted him a lucrative monopoly on the importation of sweet wines, which brought him an annual income of £2,500. This temporary reprieve transformed his circumstances, but it also set the stage for his next series of mistakes. In 1591, Essex was given command of an expeditionary force to help Henry IV in Normandy. He mishandled the assignment, leading to a falling out with the Queen. Yet his charm and flattery were enough to win her back. In 1593, he was appointed to the Privy Council, a position of great power and influence. However, his feud with Sir Robert Cecil, the son of Lord Burghley, only worsened his standing. Essex saw every setback to his clients as a result of Cecil's scheming, a petulant and misguided view that only served to isolate him further. In 1596, Essex was given the command of an expedition against Cadiz, a chance to redeem his military reputation. The mission was a success, but Essex chose to sulk because his strategic advice had been rejected, and he felt that Lord Charles Howard had received more credit than he deserved. To add to his frustration, Sir Robert Cecil was appointed to the secretaryship while he was away. The Queen, as usual, ignored his tantrum and gave him command of another fleet in 1597, this time to intercept the Spanish-American treasure fleet. The mission was a complete fiasco, and Essex's temper only worsened. By 1598, Essex's ambitions were at their peak. Lord Burghley's death left a vacancy in the lucrative mastership of the Court of Wards, a position Essex coveted. When the Queen did not immediately reassign it, he took it as a personal affront. In 1599, he was appointed Lord Lieutenant in Ireland, a role he interpreted as a plot by Cecil to remove him from the court. His time in Ireland was marked by poor decisions, including a disadvantageous truce with Tyrone. Desperate to explain his actions, he returned to England without permission, only to be arrested and placed under house arrest. In 1600, Essex was released but stripped of his sweet wine monopoly, leaving him financially ruined. His debts had mounted to £16,000, and he was desperate. By this time, he had lost all respect for the Queen, seeing her as a prisoner of the Cecil clique. He believed that if he could remove the Cecils, he would regain her favor. In February 1601, Essex staged a coup in London, deluding himself that the citizens would back him. But it was not the Cecils he had to deal with, it was the Queen. He was arrested, tried, and executed, a victim of his own hubris and self-glorification. The storm outside mirrored the turmoil within the court. Essex's fall from grace was a stark reminder of the dangers of overconfidence and the fickle nature of royal favor. As the Queen turned her back on the man who had once been her favorite, the court fell silent, the shock of his fate lingering in the air like the remnants of a storm. The Boleyn family's influence over King Henry VIII's court was a story of dramatic rise and fall, centered around Anne Boleyn's relationship with the king. For nearly 7 years, the court was preoccupied with the king's desire to annul his marriage to Catherine of Aragon and marry Anne. Anne's father, Thomas Boleyn, and her brother, George, played key roles in this effort, using their connections and influence to support the king. The king's struggle against the Pope and the Holy Roman Emperor to secure the annulment became a major foreign policy issue, leading to a pro-French stance in the ongoing conflict between Francis I and Charles V. Cardinal Wolsey, a powerful figure in the king's court, fell from grace because he failed to secure the annulment. The Boleyns, along with Thomas Cromwell, who allied with them for convenience, became the dominant force in the court. The Duke of Norfolk, Anne's uncle, was officially the leader of the Boleyn faction, but his ambitions were limited to securing Anne's position as queen. He was content to see George Boleyn promoted and used for diplomatic missions, but he drew the line at supporting the more radical evangelical reforms that Anne and her supporters favored. By 1535, the Boleyn party's influence was maintained primarily through their support of the king's second marriage and the royal supremacy, which declared the king as the head of the Church of England. The Boleyns' power depended on their ability to influence the king, but this influence was fragile. In April and May 1536, the Boleyns' power collapsed when Henry changed his mind. The king, who had once been so devoted to Anne, now trusted Cromwell more than the Boleyns. Anne was accused of treason and executed, and her family's influence in the court was shattered. The Duke of Norfolk survived but was politically marginalized, while George Boleyn and others were executed. Cromwell, who had outmaneuvered the Boleyns, became the dominant figure in the court. He secured the submission of Princess Mary, solidifying his position. However, Cromwell's power was also short-lived. In 1540, conservative forces, who had allied with him to remove Anne, turned against him and convinced the king to execute him. The Boleyns were largely forgotten, with only the young Princess Elizabeth remaining as a symbol of the past. After Henry's death in 1547, the Boleyns played a minimal role in the politics of the court during the reign of Edward VI. The Earl of Wiltshire, Anne's father, and his younger brother, James, lived quiet lives with little involvement in the political struggles of the time. Elizabeth, now the heir to the throne, became a symbol of opposition to Queen Mary I, who distrusted her because of her association with religious reform and her mother's legacy. Despite the challenges, Elizabeth's claim to the throne was recognized, and she became queen in 1558. Elizabeth's reign was marked by her skillful management of her gender and sexuality. And like her mother, who relied on manipulating her husband, Elizabeth had to rule on her own. She faced constant pressure to marry, but she skillfully avoided it, using the idea of potential marriages as a tool in foreign policy. Elizabeth's relationships with her counselors, particularly William Cecil, were structured like family relationships, which helped her maintain control. She also used her femininity to her advantage, playing the role of the Virgin Queen to symbolize the purity and inviolability of her realm. Elizabeth's ability to manage her court and counselors, and to navigate the complex political landscape of her time, was a testament to her strength and political acumen. Her reign, which lasted for 45 years, was a period of significant achievement and stability for England. The legacy of the Boleyns, particularly Anne, lived on through Elizabeth, who, in her own way, turned the challenges of her gender into a source of power and influence. The story of the Boleyns is a tale of ambition, intrigue, and ultimate transformation through the remarkable figure of Elizabeth I. Henry Carey, the son of Mary Boleyn and the brother of Queen Elizabeth, lived a life that, while not as dramatic or influential as his sisters, still played a significant role in the politics of the time. Unlike his mother, who was known for her relationships and influence at court, Henry did not inherit her penchant for scandal. Instead, he was a loyal and reliable figure, a staunch Protestant who supported the likes of William Cecil and opposed Mary, Queen of Scots. Henry's life was marked by a sense of duty and loyalty, both to his faith and to his queen. He was given various lands and minor offices by Elizabeth, and eventually the prestigious role of Lord Chamberlain. However, he was never a central figure in the court's political dramas. His son, George, followed a similar path, holding important offices but never achieving the same level of prominence as other powerful families of the time, such as the Howards or the Cecils. The true legacy of the Boleyns lies in the exceptional qualities of its women. Anne Boleyn, a brilliant and ambitious politician, paved the way for her daughter, Elizabeth I, to become one of the most celebrated monarchs in English history. Elizabeth's intelligence, charisma, and strength of character were a unique blend of her parents' traits, and she used these to rule with the authority and determination of a king. In the end, the Boleyns were not a traditional political family like the Howards or the Cecils, where the men led and shaped the course of history. Instead, it was the women Anne and Elizabeth who left an indelible mark on the world. Through Elizabeth, the Boleyn name achieved a level of glory and significance that no amount of political maneuvering by the men of the family could have matched. The historian can only be grateful for the remarkable legacy of the Boleyns, a legacy that continues to inspire and captivate to this day.